We are recording the interview of Ben Heath. This interview is being conducted by David Barry and James Hale from the Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Ben Heath's home in Dayton, Ohio. It is 6 p.m. on May 4th, 2017. So why don't we start with when and where were you born?
I was born in Orlando, Florida, 15 August 1975.
And then who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My dad was Terry Heath. He was a concrete guy, mason, bricklayer. My mom was a nurse's assistant. Her name is Leilani Marie Heath. And I have an older brother named Dennis.
Did he serve in the military?
Yes, he was Army during Desert Storm.
And is he a younger or older brother?
He's older than me.
Okay. And then what were you doing before you joined the military?
I did a lot of stuff. I graduated high school, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I had thought about the military, but as you know, every young kid, I mean, back, it's not like it is now, where it's like on TV and you guys have only known the post 9/11, what it's like to be in the military. Everybody thanking you for your service and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't much like that back then. I mean, the old Vietnam guys and the old Panamanian guys stuff would come up, hey, thanks, man, I appreciate it. You know, they were fellow veterans, they kind of knew, but it wasn't really something you brought up. You know, guys weren't wearing, fucking infidel T-shirts and proud to be a veteran and all that kind of stuff. Guys just kind of kept it among themselves. You know, I'm fourth generation military. My great grandfather was in the U.S. Army. He was a cavalry guy. Actually, the real cavalry. They rode horses. Both my grandfathers were retired Marines. They both served World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. My dad was a Vietnam guy. He was Army, 1st Air Cavalry. And then my brother, my uncle, Marine. My brother in the Army, and me, I joined the Air Force. But I was working at Toyota on Nicholasville Road in Lexington, Kentucky. I was a bay boy. I was kind of working into a mechanic intern program to become an auto mechanic. They were kind of looking at me for that. You know, first thing you do is drag cars in and out and just general shop cleanup and get the mechanics whatever they want. You're kind of just a bay boy, and then I went out to California for a while. Before that, after I graduated high school, and I did landscaping, and I learned how to get in a lot of trouble out there. Getting the fake IDs from the Mexican guys I was working with, and learned how to get in strip clubs and bars, and just generally all kinds of interesting stuff 18, 19-year-old young men want to do that you're not old enough to do yet, but you're going to find a way to do it anyway. And then I came back to Kentucky, worked at Toyota, and then I woke up one day. It was kind of like an epiphany of sorts, I guess. I had a revelation. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of sitting around here drinking beer with all my buddies. I'm going to go join the military. And so I got up that morning, all hungover, and I went down to a recruiting station. And I talked to some guys, did some stuff, went home, talked to my dad. My dad really didn't want me to join the military. He was pretty dead set against it. Of course, he was a Vietnam guy. And he's like, no. I said, yeah, I'm going to Marines. He's like, no, you ain't going to the damn Marines. And I was like, no, man, I want to go out. And he's like, what are you going to do when you get out? I said, oh, I'm not thinking about that. I just want to go and do like Grandpa did, like you did. I want to go places. I want to go see things. You can do that some other way. Join the Peace Corps, go do something. It just wasn't generally thought of like that. It is thought of today. A lot of old Vietnam guys were scared. They didn't want their sons to go to. They saw some bad stuff. And now I know why he didn't want me to go. But it started out like that. Eventually, I went to my first Air Force recruiter back home down in Ashland, Kentucky, where I was from. I graduated high school there. And I went to the Air Force recruiter's office, and it was this old tech sergeant sitting there playing his guitar, sitting on the floor on like a beanbag. Yeah, no kidding. And I went up there and I said, "Hey, I want to join the Air Force." And I wasn't big like I am now, but I was like 205 pounds, but I was in really great shape. And he goes, "How much do you weigh?" "Yeah, you're too fat." I mean, I literally had a washboard stomach and stuff, and I was like, he's like, "Yeah, you're too big, man. Hey, Army's right down the hall, dude." And he's strumming, and he just kicked the door shut right in my face. And I was like, F you. I was like, I'm going to show this guy. What it did is piss me off. So I went all the way back up to Lexington, and I found a recruiter that got me in the Air Force. And went home, told my dad I joined the Air Force, and he was just like, "Oh, man, I didn't want you to join the military." He goes, "But I'm glad you went in the Air Force." I said, "Why?" And he was like, "Man, when I was coming home one time, we stopped in this air base in the Philippines." And he goes, "I was dirty and nasty. I hadn't had a shower for at least 3 weeks, a real shower." And he goes, "I went in the chow hall, and I was taking my thing through, my tray." And he goes, this big mess sergeant, big tall black guy, come up to me, and he goes, "What do you want?" And he's like, "Eggs." He goes, "Why do you want your eggs?" He's like, "On my plate?" And he's like, "No, dumbass, you want them scrambled? Or you want it fried? Or you want an omelet?" And he's like, I said, "Well, what does that have to do with anything, Dad?" And he's like, "I never had a choice up till then." He goes, "We were on an Air Force base, man. They live great." And of course, you hear all the stories, "Oh, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're so much better," and all this. It's military's military. It's all the same. Some aesthetics are better, but it's at its core, it's never going to change. It's just military, the last form of indentured servitude on the planet. So,
outside of marriage,
it is. I mean, it's something that is the last. You learn about indentured servitude. Hell, I don't even know if they teach that in school anymore, but you learn about it. But the military really is. You're giving your life to something. You don't realize at the time. You just think you're signing up to go, meet a bunch of exotic chicks in faraway places and drink beers and sit out and play volleyball all day like the movies and shit. But it ain't like that at all. So that was it. I joined, and I went in on the delayed enlistment program in August because they couldn't get me in. It was actually the Air Force wasn't taking people back then. They were on a drawdown because it was back in Desert Storm, so they had just rifted a bunch of people. So I had to go in on I was 4 months backlogged, and they weren't letting anybody in. And he said, "Man, if you'll just go in open mechanical, I could probably get you in." Of course, recruiters, like car salesmen. So, you don't know if that's true or not, but I know it was very hard to get in back then. And I had to get a waiver because of my weight, because I didn't fit that 1923 chart. Like, "You're just way too big." And I was like, "Well, dude, measure my body fat, do what you have to do. I just want to go in and, I just want a job, and I want to serve, So, went in, checked into Lackland Air Force Base, 20 November 1996. And that was the beginning of basic training.
So, before we jump into your basic training, just want to back up a little bit. You said that your dad was really glad that you went into the Air Force. Was there any other contributing factors that led you to join the Air Force specifically? Or was it just to kind of rub it into the...
It really was to rub it in. I mean, I was a young guy, and that guy kind of slammed that door in my face, and it pissed me off. I've thought about the Army too, but of course my dad was, dead set against that. And I was just like, he's like, "Man, you're going to end up as a grunt shit somewhere." I was like, "Well, that's what I want to do. I want to go join the infantry." "Man, what are you going to do when you get out?" He's like, "Go learn a trade." He goes, "The Air Force, you're always in the back. You guys ain't around bad stuff." Or, he goes, "Man, you're always on some air base. There's always women around." It was just my dad's 1960 ideal of what the Air Force was, walking around it. It wasn't the Army that he knew. And I think that, in later years that changed because we were all stuck in the same place doing pretty much the same shit, except for your direct action units and stuff like that. But, it just ended up that way. That was basically what I did. It was a whim, it was I wanted to go. I wanted to get the hell out of Dodge, and I wanted to do something. I was 21. I was living in an apartment with 3 of my buddies, hot bunking it with one that was working night shifts and I was working day shifts, and I just, I got tired of it. It was just boring. I wanted to go see something. I wanted adventure. I wanted to go see the world, man. And, I did. I got to see it, all of it, good and bad, but it was a good time. All in all, don't regret it a bit. It was.
That's great. So, you were starting to talk about your basic training. How was it leading up to basic training and right before you left? You said that your parents were kind of against you going.
They were dead set against me going. My mother really didn't want me to go in. Of course, it's just you're young. I was the last. I was the youngest. I was the baby boy. Even though I was 21, and my mother really didn't want me to go. It was the backside of Desert Storm. So she had to kind of go through that with my brother. When my brother got deployed a little bit and not knowing and worried and watching TV and the news. I mean, it wasn't like it is now or when you guys or when when 9/11 happened. The news didn't talk about much what was going on, and you didn't get to call home, but once a week or once a month. I remember the first time. I'll talk about that later. I deployed, totally different experience from when we went into the desert and the things we had versus what we didn't have the first time I went in. I got to see that change, and it was really different, and for them it was different because they didn't have social media, they didn't have email, people called on phones, people still called home collect, so you didn't have that knowing if somebody was okay for long periods of time or just the sharing about information and about what goes on deployed now wasn't shared like it is now. People are much more open about things now than they ever were before. That's the biggest difference, and I think that contributed a lot to it. And just generally, I don't think she wanted her son to go in the military. Her dad was in the military; he retired Marine Corps. I came from a military family, and I wanted to serve. I kind of felt a sense of I wanted to serve, but you really never know that until you step in those shoes. When you give your life over and you get off that bus at Lackland or there at Fort Leonard Wood or wherever you got off at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Fort Knox, Kentucky, you're stepping into something that you really, even if you are a military dependent, you don't know what it is till you step into it. And then when you step in, you're like, whoa, what did I get myself into here? So.
Now, this is just, I'm curious, because I kind of went through the similar situation with my brother joining and my parents not wanting me to join. Did they treat your brother differently when he joined versus when you joined, or was it about
my brother was screwing up a lot in high school and college, and he was my grandfather was paying for his college and everything else, and my brother was screwing up a lot, and he really wanted to he needed some direction in life really bad, and the Army was about the best thing that ever happened to him. I mean, my brother did very well. He did very well now. He got out. Totally different experience of him getting out than me getting out. I saw my brother got out during the remnants of the Cold War was still around. It was right after Desert Storm, but the way those guys let go and got rifted and got separated back then were totally different from what we went through now. I mean, those dudes didn't know nothing. They didn't even know if they could join the American Legion. I mean, they didn't know about VA. They were like, oh, I think you got to have your legs shot off if you go to the VA. Everybody knows about the VA now. All you guys got VA cards, My brother never got... when he got his first VA card? 2 years ago. My brother been out since 93. That tells you something, huh? A way different experience. I mean, we were very lucky. We were very fortunate for what we have. But they wanted him to go in, but then when Desert Storm kicked off, I saw my dad's tone change a little bit. When he first went in, it was, he's join the Army, go in there, get his ass knocked around a little bit, it'd be okay. Whatever. But then when Desert Storm kicked off, I could see those feelings in the back of my dad's head. But back of my grandfather's head. They were all like, oh, shit, this is real. Because we hadn't been in a war since Vietnam. You had Panama and Grenada and little things like that, but those weren't widely publicized. Desert Storm was that first big American push, man. Everybody was out there, yellow ribbons waving, kind of. It was a big deal. Not for long. It didn't last a whole long time, but it was very intense. It was very overwhelming. And, it was very real. You know, because my mom and my brother said I had to go. I won't be able to call till whatever. And my mom was worried sick. My dad was worried sick. You know, he didn't act like it, but he was very, very concerned. And my grandfather was very concerned. I mean, because they knew. You know, those guys knew what the hell he's stepping into. What kind of unknown, how unknown, really unknown can be. You know, I didn't. I thought it was cool. You know, my brother, yeah, he's probably jumping out of planes and, you know, shooting Iraqis. I didn't even know where Iraq was until I actually, probably 2001. I couldn't have told you on a map. So, you know, just the difference between a young man or a child and, you know, a little bit older, you realize what's going on. And I think that was the biggest thing with my parents. They didn't want me to go through that because they, you know, I think they had a feeling. News was getting a little bit more, politics was getting a little more prevalent on the news. Reporters were just reporting things and not really factual. It was kind of the start of all that, so it gets people wound up.
So we were starting to get into your basic training. Was there any part of basic that stuck out to you as memorable, or that was there anything that helped you get through it?
You know, really, I mean, basic training's, you know, it's designed to be hard, and everybody goes, it wasn't nothing after it was over. But at the time, you know, you're isolated, you're alone, you're with people you don't know in a place you don't know. You don't really go to the bathroom for the first 2 weeks. You're so stressed out. You know, everybody goes through that part. At least I did. And everybody I knew did. And, you know, just basically the cultural differences and the differences in everybody. I mean, you're meeting guys from different places all over the country. You know, we had one guy from Minnesota. He grew up in the backwoods of Minnesota, like almost Canadian territory over there. You know, it was really weird. We had him and a bunch of guys from Minnesota, and then we had a bunch of black guys from Houston. And then you had just regular kind of guys like us that were kind of spread out there. I was from Kentucky, we had guys from Nebraska and everything. But this one kid from Minnesota kept staring at this black guy, and he was getting real mad about it. He's like, "What the hell are you staring at?" He goes, "I've never seen one of you before." But he didn't mean it like one of you. I mean, this kid wasn't racist. He'd just never seen a black person before, and he's like, "What? What? You grew up in a box? You know, you grew up in it?" And one of the guys from Minnesota was like, "Hey, man, he's from blah." And he's like, "What does that mean?" And he's like, "Dude, that's in the middle of nowhere." He's like, "Dude, did you even have a TV when you grew up?" And the guy's like, "No." And that one kid was like, "What?" And just seeing those two worlds kind of, you know what I mean? You don't think about it at the time. You're just kind of laughing at everybody. But you think about it now, you're like, wow, you know? That kid probably never saw a guy that never saw, you know, a black kid before. It was just weird. You know, you're different, and you're getting molded together. And by the end of that, I think it was only, 6.5 weeks back then, 7 weeks. You know, I remember a lot of yelling, a lot of, you know, pick it up, put it down. You're not doing this right. You're not doing that right. And then all of a sudden, about 3-4 weeks in, everybody's doing stuff right. You know, you can actually march as a flight and go do things. And I remember memorizing just loads of information and everybody talking at night, like, "What do you think you're going to do?" "Oh, my job's going to be the best job because my recruiter told me." You know, like everybody talking out, you know, a bunch of barracks lawyers and barracks recruiters. And they're talking about stuff you had no idea what you were talking about. And then guys talking about their girlfriends and blah, blah, blah. Funniest thing I ever saw in basic training was we had this TI. His last name was Jackson. He's kind of a tall, slender dude. Kind of looked like his uniform was painted on him. It was so tight and form-fitting. I remember. Guy looked sharp. And we're sitting there, and he was from like Alabama or something. And he was sitting there, and he's passing out mail. And I don't know if they teach those guys how to just to flick that mail just perfect, just to hit you right in the side of the head. But he's like, you know, Bloom, you know, Heath, Johnson, Hernandez. And it's his girlfriend, this guy Hernandez, the girlfriend had painted all this stuff all over. "I love you," and, you know, la, la, la. "Please don't be mean to my honey pie," and all this stuff all over that stuff. And he's like, "Hernandez." And he's like, "That's your girlfriend, Hernandez?" He's like, "Oh, yes, sir, yes, sir. I'm getting married as soon as I get back." You know, base training, we're all kind of like sitting there Indian style in the day room, like. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to get married." He's like, "Oh, yeah, I bet you are." He's like, "I bet Jody's taking care of that girl real nice while you're gone." And just hits him, and he's like, who's Jody? He's like, he's taking care of your girl for you. You can count on it. And I was just like, of course, that was my first introduction to Jody in the military. I didn't find out until later who that was. I was like, Jody? Who the hell's Jody? Like, take care of your girl real nice. He was just sitting there smiling the whole time. We were like...
For those that don't know, what does Jody actually stand for?
Jody is that really nice individual that keeps your girl company and rides your motorcycle and sits in your lounge chair and drinks your beer while you're gone and away. He's a really nice guy.
I'm sure he is. Was there anything else from basic training that you wanted to go over?
Oh no, that was it. It kind of flowed right into tech school. Job assignments came down, and I went in open mechanical, and they told me I was going to be a general purpose vehicle mechanic. I didn't know what a general purpose vehicle was, but it basically meant that it was a base fleet, small stuff, cars, autos, stuff like that. The biggest debacle about that was they didn't know where my tech school was because it had recently moved from Lackland Air Force Base to a place called Port Hueneme in Ventura, California. What had happened, the BRAC came down, which is the base realignment and closure thing that Congress had done. That was one of the first rounds of BRAC that went through, or a second round. And at that time, they had restructured our school and taken it down and moved it out to Port Hueneme to keep Port Hueneme Naval Base open. So it was a joint school with the Navy. And nobody knew where Port Hueneme was. And all my, your drill instructors like handing out your job assignments, say, "Oh, fire! Oh, that's up here. You're gonna like that." And they try to get some drill instructors to come in and talk to you about where that school is and where you're gonna go. But there was nobody that was a general purpose vehicle mechanic, so they were like, "You're just gonna be motor pool, dude. Whatever. That's where you're going." And I ended up going out there, and when I got there, the school wasn't even open. Everybody was on a 4-week hold. And we did nothing but clean it because the Navy had given us these very nice barracks that they had been long past been using themselves, and we had to clean them out of all the garbage and the used condoms and everything else in there, and we basically cleaned up all the weeds around it and everything else, and we basically had to make our own places to live and places to go to school. So we had to clean that all up and do that before we could actually attend class. So us and the instructors and everybody were out there every day doing, weeds and seeds and additional duties. And, we weren't doing anything really related to the job we were going to do. So I did that and then got in class, got one of the second or third classes because there was kids that had been there way longer than me. And, the good old way the government does stuff, they just, the military does stuff, just hurry up and wait. And I waited my turn, went to school, and then went on to my first duty assignment.
So, up to this point in your military career, you said that when you first got there, the culture was kind of a big shock. Was there anything else, or how was it for you adapting to the military life?
I think I adapted pretty good. I mean, like most people, that first week's a little intense, so you're kind of like, oh man, what did I really get myself into? I called my dad, you get that first phone call home, and I was like, "Dad, I don't know if I did the right thing or not." And he laughed at me. He's like, "Well, doesn't matter if you did it or not. You're in there, You just buck it up and get with it. You'll be fine. They'll ease up on you guys after a while. It's just the way they do things, son." And I was like, "I know. I hope I can do this." He's like, "Well, you can do it. Trust me." He's like, he goes, "Think about how many schmoes before you stepped in them boots and did it just like you're doing it. And, you got something to live out. Everybody in your family's done it." He goes, there ain't no coming home." He goes, you just do what you got to do and get by. And then, I thought about that the whole time. I thought it resonated with me, I guess, a little bit more. I was like, wow, my grandfather did this. My great-grandfather did this. My brother did this. My dad did this. My uncles did this. I can't really. What am I going to do? Get home and tell them I couldn't handle the Air Force? No, way. So I was going to stay regardless. I mean, I didn't care what they did to me. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, we had a couple days that ran into each other and stuff. They keep you up a little bit and stress you out and stuff like that. But at the time, it seems like a really big deal. But If that's the worst thing that ever happens to you in your whole military career, you probably consider yourself pretty lucky. That was nothing compared to what comes on later on. But that's why they do it. They do it because, what could potentially happen later. You're going to be in a worse place than that with people you don't know. And you're going to have to be together and do things you may not want to do, but, you're going to have to do them regardless. So you might as well just learn to endure and persevere a little bit and not whine about it so much and just do it.
Kind of like learn to love the suck.
You embrace it. You know what I mean? You really learn to embrace it. And I learned that later on. You meet the different personalities, the different bosses in your military career. Some are really cool guys. Some are really bunch of hard asses. Some guys have no people skills whatsoever and probably shouldn't be around people, but they're put in charge to manage them. And you're going to have to learn how to deal with those people. But 'tis just like life, You get on the outside and it's the same way. Except, maybe a little bit different. They don't own you. But, when you get a mortgage, you get kids, and you get everything else, they kind of own you still. You just got a different master. But everybody's got a master. It's just the way it is. So
after your AIT or specialty training, what happened then?
I got an assignment and to F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming, and there's nothing much Air Force about it that I knew about. I was like, well, wow, what kind of planes do they have there? And they're like, we don't have planes. And I was like, well, I thought it was an Air Force base. I thought I had planes. It was a nuclear missile base. It was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, right on the outskirts. I didn't know where Wyoming actually was. I wasn't a geography major at the time. Where it was, but they let me go home after tech school, so I flew back from California to Kentucky, and I drove out because I had this really old, crappy Chevy S10 truck that I think I paid like $800 for it. My dad and me got it running pretty good, and he's like, well, you don't want to go out to your first assignment without a car. He goes, it sucks being stuck in the barracks, without people. I was like, Dad, they're dormitories, they're not barracks. And he's like, whatever. And he was like, man, you're going to need a thing. And so I got this Rand McNally map. This is pre-GPS. And, you had to read maps back those days. And damn, it wasn't that long ago. But I drove out there from Ashland, Kentucky by myself to my first duty station. They gave me like 4 days to get there. I stayed in a hotel one night and then just kind of suicide drove it the rest. Drank Mountain Dew and turned up the radio and rolled down the windows. Keep you up. And I got in there. It was looking really awesome. It kind of went back to a conversation I had before that. In tech school, they assign you a sponsor from that base to talk to see if there's anything you need or what you're going to do. So I talked to this guy named Matt Lubeck. He was an interesting guy. A fellow smart ass like myself, although I didn't know it at the time. And I said, first thing you want to know out of base is there any? He's like, well, what do you want to know about the base? And I'm like, oh man, is there any women up there? He's like, oh, bud, there's one behind every tree. And I was like, all right, far out, man. Hey, you guys, what kind of stuff do you do in the shop? He goes, man, we work on vehicles, dude. What do you want me to tell you? Because you're a vehicle mechanic. Yeah. Not who my first boss is, or they're like, man, you get up here, you'll see what's going on, and you'll get with it. Just show up, come to this building when you get on base or whatever. Well, I'd never been to another base. I'd only been to 2 bases, So I got your little green ID card back then, and I'm driving, and I drove into Colorado because I came in on I think 70 into Denver. And I cut up 25. And as I was cutting up towards Wyoming, because it's about another 160 miles up the road, 200 miles, something like that, I get into Wyoming, and I'm just like, there's nothing. It's like this big open sky, these mountains, but I don't see any trees. And I was like, wow, one behind every tree. I was like, well, isn't it Yellowstone in Wyoming? That's on the northeast side of the bay, the state. Cheyenne's in the southern. And I'm like, man, I'm seeing any trees. Oh, well, we'll get up there. We drive up there. It's just flat as hell. And it's windy. It was the windiest place I'd ever been in my life. Till this day, I've never been in a place that was windier than that. The wind blew all the time. I mean, hard. It would like literally take your car door and take it away out of your hand and just slam it up against your hood if you didn't watch it. Just terrible. Got up there. I couldn't find the base. I stopped at a truck stop, and it was like one of those, if it would have been a snake, it'd have bit you in the face. So I'm like, sir, can you tell me where? He's like, yeah, it's one exit down. Can't you just see it right over there? I'm expecting, an Air Force base. It was just it looked like a compound, really. It was a little bit bigger once you got on it, but it was just not much, man. Drove in the front gate, and I asked where the 90th Transportation Squadron was, because that's where I got assigned to. And which those don't exist anymore in the Air Force. Transportation Squadrons no longer exist. And he said, it's by the Supply Squadron. And I was like, I don't know where that's at either. And he said, well, all the trans guys live in this dorm down here. He goes, it's like the 10th one down on the left as you come in the front gate here. So he says, go all the way down, count 10 buildings, and then turn left at that street and go behind it, and it's right there. So I turn around, I get the building, give me the building number. I can't recall what it was, and I get in there. The parking lots were in the back. So I park in the parking lot, and I'm kind of sitting there like, well, what am I going to do? I got to find people. I got to do something. And this guy pulls up, coolest dude I ever saw in my life, pulls up in this white Jaguar. It's an older Jaguar. He pulls up, man, this guy is just senior airman too, This dude was like God. I mean, I didn't have any stripes. He pulls up, and he just goes over, and this dude looked just like Tom Selleck, like Magnum P.I. And the big bushy mustache, same face, same cool hair, way out of Reg's hair. He's got this trans hat on. He's like, and he comes up in there, and the guy's name was Lance Runkles. And I was like, excuse me, sir. And he's like, I'm not a sir, dude. He's like, what do you need? I was like, are you in the 90th Transportation Squadron? I'm Airman Basic Heath. I'm supposed to be here, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, dude. Yeah. He goes, it's lunchtime right now, so I'm going to go eat. You can just chill out here or wherever. I'm going to go back to my room and eat, and then I'll take you over there. I was like, okay. So I just kind of stood out by Lance wasn't a very social guy with the I guess I wasn't cool enough at the time. And he came out, and about 30 minutes later, he comes back out. We go over to the shop. He showed me the way to get over to the shop. And I checked in and met my first boss, and Richard Brule, great guy. Met him and just kind of got there and got in the swing of things. The practical jokes start, and you're not as smart as you on the processes and the goings on. That night, I come back, and these two other senior airmen that I was working with, because basically what they do when you're a new mechanic is they put you with two other guys, a trainer, and you kind of basically just follow him around. And my guy was John Prather. In fact, he's a chief master sergeant, just retired a couple months ago. Me and John were friends ever since. Ever since that first assignment. I still call him. But hell, I still talk to him on the phone. In fact, I talked to him probably a couple weeks ago. He's retired now, lives in Arkansas. And he kicked open my door with a guy named Will Reedus, and we drank a 30-pack of Coors Extra Gold that night while they threw my underwear and everything else around the room because it was still folded in the little squares. And they were making fun of me. They're like, dude, you don't have to do that shit no more. You just do whatever you want, man, because you got this little Amish kid, in your room. But, I don't know if he was really Amish. I think he was, just very religious, but he was very quiet. He moved out shortly after I moved in, so I think I came in a little drunk, a couple too many nights for his taste, and probably with some female company, and he didn't like that, so he moved on. But the dorms were great, man. Back then, it was mid-90s. Air Force was still, pretty cool back then. You get off work, it was all about working hard and playing hard. As long as your uniform looked good. We had to iron our stuff, polish everything back then. It wasn't like now where they don't polish shit or iron anything. Everybody looks like a friggin' duffel bag. Yeah, you had to look sharp, and you had to, at least look like you knew what you were doing. You didn't really have to know it. but that came later. But a lot of it depended on the way you carried yourself, and I tried to be as attentive as I could. I wanted to learn everything, and I tried to get into everything, but I broke a lot of stuff and learned, and had a lot of patient people help me. And but it was good times, man. After work, we all hung out together. It was always you're always with your friends. You had your buddies in the barracks. You were never alone. You always had somebody to hang out with. You always had somebody. Back then we didn't have any TV in the barracks. There was only one TV. It was a TV room. All our bathrooms were in the hallway. It wasn't like now where they have, they're in. You got to share a pisser with somebody else and stuff. You shared a pisser with 90 people, and we party in the hallways. Everybody's had their doors open, stereos going after work, and just be pounding beers and hanging out, man. That's just what you did, First sergeant walked through, and he was pretty cool. A guy named Sergeant Ernest. He was our first sergeant. He used to just come through, and he'd have a beer with us and then take off. But just make sure, we weren't in there killing each other or something. Or not a lot of it, anyway. And, basically trying to pick up on some of the local Wyoming talent there. There wasn't much. Wyoming did not appreciate the Air Force Base there very much. They used to have signs in the front yard off base called, say, Airmen, get off my lawn, and stuff like that. It was a little different, It was a little different. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. I deployed out of there once, which was rare back then. Deployments didn't happen a lot. And they deployed me to Saudi Arabia in October of 1997. I deployed to Saudi Arabia. I deployed to Al-Kharj, Saudi Arabia, for almost 6 months. I went from there to March of 98. And then, came back, and I had orders. They said, hey, man, you're going to... Somebody asked me, I remember Sergeant Mark Muse, who was the mass sergeant in charge at the time, come and ask me if I had anybody, family in the military. I said, well, no, not presently. He's like, you sure you don't know somebody? I'm like, no. He's like, well, you got orders to Simbach, Germany. I was like, well, where's that? He goes, dude, that's one of the coolest assignments ever, man. He goes, the WRM facility up there. He goes, you guys aren't even supporting a base. You're supporting war reserve material places in like Denmark and Norway and Luxembourg and all these kind of places. He goes, it's a cool assignment. He goes, you usually can't get that unless you're E5. He goes, you're only E2. Or, how did you pull that? And I was like, well, I don't know. Well, it was a mistake. I got there and I signed in and everything. They're like, yeah, you're not supposed to be here, but I was already signed in, so they kept me. I wasn't supposed to be here until I was at E4. So it was cool. It just happened, and I went from there to Simbach, Germany, and I stayed there for 3 years, and that was the best 3 years of my military career. That was awesome. That was the best time I had I think my whole life, just about. It was good. Good times.
I really enjoyed my time in Germany, but what made it the best 3 years of your life?
I think the overseas environment, in the States in the military, there's a lot of married guys and there's a lot of stuff, and even the single guys, they kind of go their own way. You always got that core group of guys you hang out with, but, nobody really gets together and really, I heard about those, like, we didn't have a lot of shop parties in the States, and stuff like that, and I'd always heard stories of guys overseas were like, man, you go overseas, it's totally different, and it was everything they said it was. It was good times. This was still pre 9/11. Still, we were over in Germany. We were in very old facilities, very degraded, but man, we would get work done and we would have barbecues every Friday. We would, 4-day weekends in USAFE just seemed like an every month thing. There was always seemed to be a holiday or a 3-day or a 4-day weekend. You never really had to burn your leave. And, there's just so much in Europe to see. You get to go in with a couple guys. Get enough gas coupons. We used to get gas coupons back then. And we'd throw our money together, man, and try to go someplace every payday. We weren't making garbage back then, but, you go back there. And just the barracks, man, life. And the clubs on base were rocking, back in those days. There'd be German girls all over there and stuff. And, we had to go see what that was all about. And, it was it was just a good time. I mean, good guys, good times. Crisp, unit Christmas parties were. I mean, we rented out a castle one time, and our colonel actually took some of the buses from our own unit and drove everybody back and forth from there. He had one guy stay sober. He gave him like a 4-day pass just for staying sober and driving everybody back to base so nobody got DUI. I mean, they did stuff like that back then. Nowadays, we're like, oh, you can't do that because of this regulation, and But I'm like, but that was just him looking out for everybody. I mean, commanders were really they took care of people back then. I mean, they were really they were awesome. Major Peters, Colonel DeFalco, those guys, they were just great commanders. They really you could tell they really loved what they were doing. It wasn't like this whole the veil of gets lifted when you get up in rank, and then you see commanders that are really scared to make decisions and scared of all that stuff. These guys weren't scared of nothing, man. They were just, in my eyes back then, they were gods, man. You do anything with those guys. They just took care of people, man. I mean, even when guys got in trouble, it wasn't hey, let's beat them down till they get it was like you took your licks, you took your punishment, and you moved on. It wasn't a one mistake Air Force or military back then. It was you grew up in the military back then. Grew with it, and it was great. It was just really I learned a lot. Got to see a lot. Went TDY all over Europe. I mean, I went up to the Arctic Circle. I went to Norway, Luxembourg, Denmark. I got to go to Italy, Britain, went over there. Went to Spain. I got to go to. I deployed to Kosovo during that time when the Kosovo kicked off in '99. President Clinton. We went into Kosovo to stop the ethnic cleansing that was going on. That was interesting. That was my first real taste of kind of an operation, what was going on, and how the military really kind of goes from this lackadaisical bureaucratic, you know, structure to a very fine, well-oiled, no shit, let's get this done type organization. When contingencies are in their infancy, it's really interesting to see all those safeguards and processes and all that kind of garbage. You're like, man, how come it takes so long? All get knocked down and just like get the job done. And it's really amazing how much the U.S. military can really do when it really has to do it. You're just like, this is incredible. And that was my first real taste of seeing that. I saw a little bit in the desert, when I deployed to Saudi Arabia, a little bit, but it was kind of on a very low-key status there when we were there, you know what I mean? It was kind of real. It was, Saudis really didn't want us there, but we were there, so. But Kosovo's the real thing, and I actually went down and deployed up to Luxembourg, Norway, and took assets out of storage and got them down to like Malden Egg Row and Camp Bondstill, and got it into Serbia and near the city over there, Sarajevo. We had camps there where we were sending equipment down there to set up bases, and we had Harvest Falcon equipment and Harvest Eagle stuff, which was basically base kits, ready-made bases, toilets, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff, food kitchens, portable, everything. Ship it down, get it set up. So that's how we did it then, as compared to like in 9/11 where we basically had contractors doing all that kind of stuff. That was totally different, totally different. So, did that, went through all that, and then actually on the day I was supposed to leave, the day before I was supposed to leave Germany, that assignment, I was supposed to leave on September 12th, 2011. And I didn't, because the day before that, 9/11 happened. And that changed that changed everything. That was the game changer. Never saw anything like that totally polarized not only America, but the military. It changed the military instantly into this. We were just coming off Kosovo, but it really wasn't anything like what was going to happen. Just the sheer I would just say logistical and industrial revolution of the military. To that point, I mean, we expanded, we grew, we were bringing people in. Up to that point, you know, you had to have they weren't letting anybody in. I mean, you couldn't even get in the military because we were still kind of under Clinton. You know, we weren't going to get anybody in the military. He was balancing the budget. So he cut the military, cut all the agencies in the DOD, you know, gave all the welfare out and everything like that, but he cut all the military, the Defense Department apparatuses. So CIA was cut, FBI was cut, everybody was cut. And they were very stagnant. Military was drawn down to post Desert Storm levels. Even with Kosovo going on, it was amazing that we even pulled that off. And we did it, you know. But then 9/11 kicked on, man, and it was just... I was in a... I was out of my dorm room, and they put me in the building at Simbach for the week before I was supposed to fly out, right? I was supposed to get a Frankfurt and fly out, so I was just staying in transient, you know, building. And I was watching movies on VHS, you know, like my boss and all them just said, hey, out process, don't come in. You know, you're just kind of basically hanging around base, you know, till you got to take off. And I went down to the movie store. It was on 9/11. And I went and turned the last of my videos in because I was like, well, I'm not going to watch any that night because I got to fly out the next morning, so I'm going to turn my videos in, and that's it. And it was down at the foot of the hill at Simbach Village. And I looked up at the screen, and I saw one of the towers get hit. And I thought it was a movie. I was like, hey, man, what movie's that? And this lady looked at me with this, like, look on her face, and she's like, that's not a movie. And I was like, what do you mean? I was like, man, this thing just hit the tower. She goes, no, a plane just hit the tower. It was the first plane. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, my God, that's terrible. Like, somebody really screwed up there. Pilot flew a plane in the tower. I mean, this is how naive America was back then. It wasn't... Nobody thought, no, you didn't hear the word terrorist. You didn't hear that word. Nobody knew, you know, if you just, oh, there's a terrorist, and people looked at you like, what the hell are you saying? What's a terrorist? You know, nobody knew about that. Nobody knew where Afghanistan was. This is a funny story. I mean, I'll tell you that in a second, but I was like, oh, holy crap. And then I was like, man, that's awful. I feel so bad for those people, and bad pilot and everybody up in the tower. And wow, that's really awful. But then I was like, man, that sucks. Well, you know, gonna go back to America tomorrow. And then all of a sudden, boosh, second plane hits. And I instantly knew something was not right. We still weren't thinking terrorists. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. I just knew that I needed to get my car and get back to base. And by the time I got back to base, I mean, we're talking about a 5-minute drive up the hill. I flipped that car around, went up the hill to Simbach. They were already putting out blockades and locking down a place. There were already A-10s flying over the base from Spangdahlem up north. Stuff was getting real serious, and we didn't know what it was. Still had no clue. Nobody on Tom Brokaw on TV wasn't saying anything about terrorists. They were like, these planes must have been hijacked by some very bad people. Why would 2 of them fly in there? And then you had speculation, like people on TV talking about maybes, but then there was people talking about, well, God, this could just be like a bad glitch in all the guidance systems for airplanes. You know, I mean, that sounds so ridiculous to us now, but that's how, you know, America hadn't faced anything like that yet. We didn't know what was going on, and the news started that streamer. That's the first time I ever saw that streamer across the bottom of the TV. Up to that point, news went off at 9 o'clock at night. It only came on at certain times during the day. You never saw the news. There were no 24-hour news coverage anywhere, ever. That never happened until that happened. And then all of a sudden, 24-hour news networks started up. People were just sitting on there talking. They didn't even know what to say. They were like, we're just going to play this video again of the plane hitting the tower. And it was just so weird. And we were like, gosh, what's going on? What's going on? And then a little later on that afternoon, well, it was at evening for us over in Germany because we were 6 hours ahead. we had got recalled to our shop. And they basically gave us, they locked down the shop. I mean, posted guards on the door and started telling us what was going on. And we were like, why are you doing that? I mean, like, why are we posting guards everywhere? We're like, what's going on? And they were like, a subversive group of hijackers. The word was hijackers. Have hijacked those planes and they flew them in the building. We're going to ramp up operations. We don't know why we're ramping them up. We don't even know where we're going. And then the news reported the next day that some of those guys could have been from Afghanistan. We stood up in a briefing. One guy stood up. It was like an officer. He was a captain. He goes, sir, could you tell the guys where Afghanistan is? I mean, what goes on there? He's like, because I'm really not even kind of up on that. And the commander was like, this is the funny part. He was sitting there, Major Peter Finn. He was like, don't know much about it. We fought a war back there in the 80s, 70s. He's like, Chief. And he pointed to this old E9 we had, Chief Shoemaker, who actually had his Vietnam service ribbon and other stuff on there. We didn't even know what they were. And he's like, yeah, guys, you guys heard about, we fought the Russians in Afghanistan. We fought a CIA-backed covert war there in Afghanistan. He goes, there were some units at Herbert Field that I may or may not have been in. That we flew equipment into what they called the Mujahideen, and we supported that to oust people out of Afghanistan and help get the Russians out of there. And he goes, that's basically, he goes, Afghanistan's here, and he actually drew it up on a board. He goes, it's right here. This is Europe. And he goes, yeah, smart guy. I mean, of course, he looked about 150 years old to us. He was just old Chief to us, but we were just like, wow, Chief's like God. He knows everything. You know what I mean? And we were like, wow. So we all went to the library after work and looked because, of course, there wasn't any internet back then. Even in 2001, the military didn't really have internet that much. Only the shop bosses had internet, and it was to pass dirty jokes around to each other on. We didn't really, they still stood up in roll call every morning and read out stuff. You still got your orders on these big sheets of printout green and black paper and stuff, and it really wasn't that advanced in 2001, man. The military was still kind of way behind. And then all of a sudden, man, we got with it. And everything got technologically advanced real quick. And it was pretty crazy. That was, it kind of led me into my next assignment, really. It was almost like fate. Nobody could get orders out of USAFE at that time in 2001 because of the stop loss going on. We didn't have enough people, and they were like, man, we're not getting anybody orders out of here until we can figure out, they were basically broke. We didn't have any money. The Air Force was broke. Commands were broke. They didn't want to move people because it was costing too much. So they said, you might be here for a couple months past your due date or 6 months or whatever, just get used to it, whatever. Well, I had saw a special duty assignment out there because I wanted to get out of Germany. We got this new shop boss in. You know how you think it's the worst thing in the world when the old regime leaves and the new regime comes in. I wanted to get out of Germany, stupid me. Young airman, just made staff sergeant. First time somehow. Don't even know how I did that. And I saw this thing on there, and they had this thing that they had passed around to all the shops, and nobody wanted to do it. You had to go and basically live with the Army, go to airborne school, go to infantry training, and be in this new high-speed unit in Georgia where you may or may not be a part of this, that, and they're going to be attached to 82nd Airborne and Special Forces and all this kind of stuff. You have to do all this high-speed hua Army stuff, which the Air Force up to that point was not very hua. It was still very much Air Force-centric. We had done work with the Army a lot back then. It was very, very different mentality than it is now. And that's another thing that 9/11 caused was a lot of jointness. Because we just, we had to. We had to work together. And we didn't do that before. We were very much separate. And I called this guy, Chief Randy McCormick. And he asked me, he goes, you want to go to airborne school? And I was like, that's where you jump out of planes and stuff, right? And he's like, yep, you got to do PT, We do PT 5 times a week. It's this real hoo-hoo. And I was still a young guy, really great shape, And I was like, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. That's some stuff I wanted to do originally in the Army and Marines and stuff like that, right? And I wanted to get out of it. I mean, vehicle maintenance was boring to me. I had learned everything I wanted to learn, And he was like, yeah. He goes, well, a lot of guys, nobody from your career field wants to do this. He goes, so if you want to do this, give me your social security, because I had to call him on the phone, He goes, give me your social security number, and you'll be hearing something in a few days. And I was like, oh, yeah, Chief, here you go. Gave my social security number on the phone, my date of birth, date of rank, all that kind of stuff. He's like, all right, man, I'll be talking to you. And I went back, told my shop boss, said, yeah, did this. And he goes, dude, you ain't nobody getting orders out of here right now. He goes, nobody's got that kind of juice. He's like, nobody's leaving. We're at a shortage, especially in this career field here. He goes, you'd be at least 6 months. And he goes, plus, what are you doing that? That's living with the Army and stuff. What, you want to go be all hua and what good is that? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's different. I want to go do something different. And well, I had volunteered for that. Well, that was before 9/11 happened, and now 9/11 happened, and I had orders. Like 3 days later, I got orders. Like this guy from the order room come over and goes, how the hell did you get orders? He goes, you got somebody in the military? Is it somebody in the family? I was like, no. He's like, well, you got orders, brother, to the 820th Security Forces Group in Moody Air Force Base, Georgia. And I was like, what? And I was like, man, okay. Coolest thing I ever did in my life, man.
So you switched from being a mechanic to security forces?
Well, it was weird. I was still a mechanic, but I had to learn their job too. When you went to that unit, they sat you down. They told you basically you're an enabler here, but everybody's a shooter. Everybody's in security forces. We all dress the same. We all look the same. It was very much Army oriented, SOPs, doing this. And I had never been around that kind of military stuff before. I was very much in the Air Force. And I had to learn a whole new game, man. It was 3 years of intense. I mean, we PT'd 5 days a week. Chief McCormick was he was one of the first guys, Air Force guys, ever to be an instructor at Ranger School, or U.S. Army Ranger School. He was a mountain instructor. And this dude was serious. I mean, the colonel was a Ranger, Air Force, and Ranger tabbed. The chief was, all the leadership was. These dudes were very serious Air Force guys. I mean, our deputy commander was Crow, a combat rescue officer, Colonel Zimpata. And these dudes were very, very gung-ho. Very about business, very about, you're a mechanic, but you're going to know how to do a weapon. You're going to know how to set up sectors of fire. You're going to learn this because your life's going to depend on it. It may one day. And I was like, wow, this is real. And I got there and it was everything they said it was going to be and more. I got there and there was a couple other mechanics there that had followed them up from Lackland when they moved the group from Lackland up to Moody. And, my indoctrination into security forces started then, and these aren't just security forces like out here on base. These guys are totally different. These dudes are straight up air-based ground defense. And their lineage traces back to a unit called Safe Side in Vietnam. That's who they come from, who are straight air-based ground defense guys. They don't do law and order. They do straight up protecting the base, setting up bases in austere locations, and putting up security, doing patrolling, everything. I mean, it's very combat arms oriented stuff. And that's what I did. Went to there, had to sign all these volunteer forms that I volunteered for airborne school, that I volunteered for infantry training, and SF ground combat leaders training, and I got into it, man. I really liked it. I mean, I probably should have done that with my career, because I really enjoyed that stuff. I liked being outside. I liked being physical. I liked, learning about how to set up things like that. And I just took to it really quick, and I had a really good career there. Deployed a couple times. Went to Afghanistan, went to Iraq. we were actually on the initial invasion of Iraq when we went in there in 2003. We went in there. We convoyed in from Kuwait and went down in there. We were one of the first units with the Army. We were one of the first Air Force units on the ground in Afghanistan. As far as like mainstream Air Force, I mean, there's Air Force guys there, but they were like combat controllers and stuff, and pararescue, and they were in SOCOM and stuff. We actually followed some of the first conventional forces in there to Bagram. It was actually Bagram Airfield at the time. It wasn't the place with Starbucks and everything as you guys know today. They had Taco Bell there and everything. I see that place now. I'm like, man, that place was nothing but a minefield when I went there. It was nothing. We went in there at night with night vision goggles on, and we had to be led through this thing of glow sticks through the minefield. You couldn't step off. They were IR glow sticks because it was completely blackout condition. We still had Northern Alliance guys in the tower, dudes with beards, and they were Afghani Northern Alliance guys that helped overthrow the Taliban. I hate saying that, but yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I mean, there was nothing but like Army Rangers, Special Forces guys on the ground, infantry. 82nd Airborne Division was sitting there. 101st came in, 10th Mountain, those guys. It was nothing but infantry. So it was really, really neat experience.
So during this time, what were some of your duty assignments? What did a normal day look like for you?
Deployed?
Yes.
Filling up HESCO barriers. I got a Bobcat working, and I filled up HESCO barriers. Pulled guard at night, when your shifts came up because we didn't have a lot of people there. So I pulled guard at night, I was one of the only guys that knew how to get the Bobcat working, so I got to work the Bobcat mostly instead of digging them manually. But hey, that's the benefits of knowing how to work on stuff. And then I built latrines because we were shitting in ditches back then. And Brown and Root and Kellogg was not on the ground yet. They weren't on the ground. So we didn't have chow halls. We were eating MREs. And eventually the Army took pity on us Air Force guys and actually started letting us eat some of their big GBU things they have. The big meal things. Some sergeant major over there was like, hey guys, why don't you guys come over and get at least breakfast and dinner with us? And then, you eat one for lunch until we get the chow set up. And they were actually pretty cool with us. They gave us crap and stuff like that, but when the rubber met the road, they were really everybody just came together and did what they had to do. You were just there to set up. I mean, planes weren't even landing; they weren't staying on the tarmac yet. 130s would come in hot, drop people off, and leave. We didn't have any planes, and then we had some A-10s on the tarmac that started staying there for close air support missions that were happening off base. And the place was very active at the time, very hot. I helped build showers, plumbing. I did whatever. I mean, I was always mechanically inclined, so I did that. And then I started rolling out on convoys because they needed guys to roll up in, and because they were having vehicles break down and stuff like that. So they were like, hey, we'll just take a mechanic with us just in case. Maybe you can fix something along the way. So I started rolling out on convoys to like Kabul, up in the mountains. And I started helping these guys from 23rd STS in Washington. They were helping some Army guys and everybody else do some... I don't think I can really talk about that part. They were doing some stuff and buying things from Afghanis to make it less... I don't know how you say. They were less able to shoot at us with the things we were buying from them. You know what I mean? And then we had to sign a bunch of statements afterwards, not to talk about what we were doing. And then we went on to some of these hearts and minds things with the PSYOP guys and the counter intel guys. They were trying to find out where all the arms caches and stuff were at. And because these guys were bombing us every night, hitting us with mortars and a lot of Chinese 107 rockets and a lot of crap that was left over from the Russians and the Chinese. And we went out to these villages and hand out candy, and I got to do some of that. I was out there with those guys a lot because I had a skill set. I knew how to fix stuff, and the fuel was very crappy there, and things would happen, and you don't want to be on foot in Afghanistan. That ain't no place to be on foot, especially out there in some of them places. So that's what I did there. And then Iraq, pretty much the same thing, set up the base. We went in and set up a new base there. It was Talil Air Base. And then it turned in, well, no, it was Al Assad. And then it turned from Al Assad into Talil, but it was one of the original places the 10th Special Forces Group went in during Desert Storm. It was an old ammo bunker place. And, we were all supposed to be looking for weapons of mass destruction or something, but there wasn't nothing but a bunch of wild-ass dogs to shoot at and old barbed wire. And then we ended up getting Iraqi prisoners there. But the funny thing about that, not the funny, I mean, this isn't funny, but we were sitting there, we were staged in Kuwait to go into Iraq. And this just tells you how weird fate is. And you might guys ever heard a story of Jessica Lynch? You know Jessica Lynch, right? That woman that was basically, her and another gal, I forget her name. They didn't publicize her name as much as Jessica Lynch. I don't know why. But they were captured. They were actually ambushed by an Iraqi unit. Their whole refueling company was. They were a bunch of truck drivers. But they were driving refuelers down to some Army air base. Well, they were up there in Kuwait, and they left out of there. And
didn't they get lost?
They got lost. Well, everybody had like these maps from like 1973, and they just had, they just went the wrong way and got lost, got turned around. Well, we were supposed to leave out with those guys because they were kind of going the same direction, but then at the last minute we didn't go just because, I guess everybody didn't have their shit together or something. Because we were just sitting around there trying to figure out, everybody was just trying to find a way in. There were so many people there trying to figure out how to get in Iraq, and the military apparatus just wasn't. There's so many guys staged there sitting around, and okay, hurry up, we're gonna leave in 5 minutes. Okay, down for 8 hours, we're gonna be back. All right, everybody, we're gonna leave in 5 minutes. Get your shit up. Okay, tomorrow we're gonna leave. So everybody, we're gonna leave at 4. So everybody comes in at 2, and then your squad leader come over. Oh, yeah, we're not coming at 2. We're gonna come at 12. And then everybody was there 18 hours early, and then we wouldn't leave again. And then it was just typical military. Just the way everything happens, you just get used to it after a while. Sit there and eat beef jerky and crack bad jokes. But yeah, that was crazy. And then we were in Al Assad. The actual Rangers and the SF guys that came through, they actually came through our base and hot fueled out there at Assad because we had a POL guy that had hot fuel bladders. So that was a staging point. They said, "Hey, you guys are gonna have some choppers come through tonight, hot fuel them." So we watched these choppers come in. The PO guy's like, "Yeah, we got some Blackhawks coming in. We don't know what the hell's going on, though." And we're like, "Well, we wonder what they're doing." Well, they came back and they hot fueled through us and then went onto that hospital because these Jessica Lynch and the other lady were at some hospital. And they went in there, fought their way in there, got these guys, rescued them, and brought them back. But they didn't tell us that at the time because it was all top secret, right? We're all like, "Dude, I wonder what those choppers are doing." Then later on that night, a buddy of mine was in the command post, and he's like, "Dude, those choppers came through here? Dude, they went and got Jessica Lynch, man." Because we saw the super guys, saw the goggles and the little birds. I mean, we knew they were like special, but we didn't know what they were. But we were like, "Shit, man, they came." We were like, "Hey, man, you fueled up those choppers. That's pretty awesome." Some POL guy sitting over there picking his nose. He's like, "Yeah, man, I put fuel in those birds. That's pretty cool." It was just like, wow, you were kind of part of it. You were sitting there on the ground, and we were sitting down there. Hell, the first 20 days we had to wear our chem suits. Everybody was sweaty, nasty. Of course there was no chemical weapons, but we didn't know that. It was pretty scary. So it was different.
Well, we're coming up on our time here. I just have a couple more questions.
Okay, I'm sorry. Am I going over? Or?
No, you're fine. You're fine. How's it been readjusting back to civilian life after you've been out?
It's a little different, man. I mean, I have an analogy I use for that. I miss the clowns, but I don't miss the circus. I mean, I miss the people. You always miss the people. You always miss the fellas people you serve with. But I don't miss. I mean, there's certain things I miss about the military, but I don't miss the bureaucracy. You know, I stayed in the military long enough to where I was one of they. I had to come down and enforce policy and do stuff like that. I was one of the old super lifers I used to make fun of when I was a young cat. Uh, I didn't like doing that so much towards the end. I liked taking care of guys, but I didn't like, punishing dudes and stuff like that. I didn't care for it anymore. And I just saw that. I'm seeing the switch now, even though it's a little bit preemptive because we still are at war, very much so. But the military is shifting from a lot of the war dogs, the old guys, to the younger, more in garrison. It's going to switch back to the in garrison military that I originally knew, which was kind of boring, which was exercises and inspections and, everybody going to spit and polish and blah, 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 and good order and discipline and accountability and just goes back to corporate because there's nobody else to kill. I mean, that's just the way it is. They got to let all the guys that know about all the killing, they're going to let them go. Because can't have them around no more because they ain't going to believe all that corporate shit no more. They're going to be like, that ain't real. What am I going to do? We're going to have an exercise again? Guys that seen the real shit, well, they don't care about exercises. They know what it's like, So that's the biggest change. But no, I mean, it's been pretty good. I was very fortunate last 6 years of my career. I got into acquisitions, and I got a very good job. I get to still help out the Air Force. I will always love the institution. I love the military and what it's done for me. But, and I still get to help them out, help the young cats get what they need in some way. I'm just an old fat guy that sits at a desk now, but, it's nice to be able to help.
Oh, yeah. And then, are you a member of any veteran organizations?
Yes. I'm a life member of the BFW, Veteran Foreign Wars. I'm a life member of the American Veterans Association, AMVETS. I'm a member of American Legion, and I'm a member of the Combat Veterans Motorcycle Association. I'm the commander for that.
And then, has joining those associations, has that helped with the readjustment?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, everybody talks about, oh, you're 1% of society, all this kind of stuff, but you really are. I mean, nobody's going to ever know, once you get away from the military and what you've been through, and you're never going to be able to really connect with those people. I mean, there are a lot of great people in civilian life, man, but you're never going to meet them like you met those guys when you were in the military. You're always going to yearn for that. And you'll yearn for it even more when you're not around it anymore. Like where I work at, it's all civilians. There's one guy that's been in the military. Me and him are always, some Marine guy. I got to give him a bunch of stuff for joining Marines, but great guy. But, he was happy when I got there. He's like, oh, man, nobody else was in the military around here, dude. And so we can tell each other those bad, very dark humor jokes and laugh at everybody and stuff, kind of like you do. So.
Then, how did your wartime experience affect your life?
I mean, in some ways, has it... I think it's affected in some good ways and some bad ways. I mean, in good ways, it's, taught me to appreciate a lot and to know that every day isn't going to come. You think you're young and indestructible and stuff until you have to put one of your young friends in a bag or something like that. And then you'll think about that every day of your life. I mean, it's never going to leave you. It's never going to... there's some horrible shit that happens, man. Stuff you don't even want to speak about because it's so horrible. But it's the price. We get to sit here, we get to drink our beer, we get to date whoever we want to date, we get to buy whatever we want to buy. When this is the greatest country on the face of the earth. It really is. I mean, everybody else, they're just fucking second or jealous. And that's the way, I mean, Germany, great. I've lived in all those countries, man. I've been everywhere. Nothing's as great as this place. You can grow up and be anything here that you want to be. I mean, even a fucking politician if you want to, but, if you want to do that. But you can be anything you want to be here. I mean, all that other stuff, just a bunch of fucking excuses. I mean, I'm a kid from Kentucky that grew up with nothing. I got a college education. I got a master's degree. I have a retirement for the rest of my life from a country that gives it to me because they appreciate their veterans. I mean, you guys get to go to school because of the Veterans GI Bill. No other country takes care of their veterans like we do. I mean, are there some hiccups and stuff in the VA? Sure. But by and large, when you look at the whole picture, the big picture, we're the best we've ever been taken care of, bro. And you can thank your Vietnam veterans for that because those guys made sure you're getting what you're getting now. So you thank them. Don't thank me. Thank them. I mean, but I think it's awesome. It's been on the wartime part. It's just something you got to live with. It's part of the human condition. I mean, we're all gonna. There's always gonna be war. I mean, and some people are gonna have to fight them. Some people ain't. It was the luck of the draw with me. I was lucky I made it home a couple times. Very lucky. I'm glad I'm here. I'm sorry for the ones that couldn't, but that just is what it is.
And then I only have a couple more questions left for you. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to this interview?
I don't know. I mean,
I mean, it definitely sounds like there's a lot that we didn't get into, and maybe if you want, maybe a second parter might be in order.
That's totally up for you, man. If you want to do it, I mean, I feel like I'm boring you guys to death. I really don't feel like I have a lot to share. I'm just a regular dude. I haven't had. I mean, I had a really interesting career. I had a great time. I loved doing what I did. I loved serving my country, and I think as you get older, you appreciate that more. I'm not as comfortable with the celebrity status. Everybody thanking me for my service and all that kind of stuff. No thanks needed, man. I was glad to do it. Thank you for their support. I mean, I think that's great, especially for you guys. I think it's really great. But I don't need it as much. I know what I did. I know what I mean, I'm just, like I said, I didn't do anything special. I stayed in the military for 20 years. I was lucky to do it. I didn't get hurt. I didn't get pushed out like some guys did. I just, I appreciate the country appreciates us, but I don't need to be thanked. I always feel weird when that happens. I'm not a hero. All the heroes I know are gone, But I don't know, just generally how they feel. I mean, how you feel about your country and everything. I don't feel like my country betrayed me or anything like that. I mean, have politicians betrayed us? I mean, historically, that can be argued through historical facts and everything else, but I was never betrayed by the guys that were next to me. So, and that's really who you do it for. Everybody talks about, I'm doing this for my country, and you kind of are, but you're doing it for more than that guy next to you than you're doing it for anybody else. That's how I always felt. So, no, I think you guys did a great job. There's a lot. There's a lot. My whole life was spent in the military, my whole young adult life, so there's a lot to tell. But a lot of beer drinking stories and stuff that probably don't need to be in the National Archives here. We'll just leave those in the memories of those that were maybe there and present. Maybe a few Polaroids out there. But.
And then one last question. What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
What message? Not to sound corny, but love your country. Your country is more than your government. Your country is your country. Your country is your people, your family. No matter what you come from or what bad conditions you come from or anything, you were born, and I truly believe this, and I'm not, you can call me brainwashed or whatever. This is the greatest country in the world. We are a blessed country. We are blessed, man. We have more in this country and more opportunity for anybody that's willing to get up and go work and do what you got to do than you have anywhere else. And that's just a fact. I mean, there are some countries that do some things better than we do it, but it ain't America, man. I mean, we are still, I mean, we're becoming a little bit of, I don't know another word for it, a little pussified with all this, sharing and caring and lovey-dovey stuff. But, this freedom is born on the backs of young men and women that go out and do those evil things on your behalf.